So we are at the All-Star break. The Cavs, you could say they actually are where they were last year, technically, 4 seed. Now, I think if they had this win percentage last year, they would have been like the 2 seed and like a half game back from the 1 seed. It just so happens that 38 wins at the All-Star break is the 4 seed in the East. Do you realize we would have the 2 seed by a significant margin in the West? Like a significant, and the tiebreaker over Memphis. Like there would be an insane margin if we were in the West, but we're in the East. And luckily, the Nets decided to get rid of everybody. I think that's what we talked about the last time we were here. But now that the Cavs are at 38 wins at the All-Star break, the final stretch of the season is approaching after this All-Star break. The All-Star break is an interesting time because people assume it happens in the middle of the year. It really happens right before the last third of the season. And I think that's why basketball gets so interesting. It's purposely laid out this way, right? Because it's like football ends, the All-Star break is the weekend of after the last football game of the year. Now that happens because the season got extended by 1 week in the NFL. And then after the All-Star break, that's really when, like, hey, if your team's in contention, it gets serious after that All-Star break. The rosters are set, no trades. I think there's even a buyout deadline now where everything's set. Now you got to go and win. So for you, Ab, looking at this season, looking at the collapse of last season, what's the number, the magic number for this Cavs teams in terms of wins that they need to get to in order for, I think, Cavs fans in general to feel satisfied with this season?
Yeah, well, it is funny that is kind of a sprint to the end of the season after the All-Star break. Like, you're right, it does come at an interesting time. And last year, we kind of collapsed after the All-Star break. That's when everything started falling apart. So we were at, 36 wins, and then we ended up only winning like 8 more games, maybe. It was a bit of a struggle. So obviously this year, I feel like we are in a better place. We're healthier than we were at this time last year. And just momentum in general, I think, has carried us well, which is giving me like really high expectations from where we can net out. I really want to hit 50 wins total for this team, at least. Like that's definitely the main goal. I don't necessarily care as much about the win total as I do the seeding. And I think it would be really cool to come out at the 3 seed, but I would be very happy with the 4 seed. Like, that wouldn't be a disappointment to me if we stayed right where we are at and finished out there, because I think Philly is just a really good team. And then obviously Boston and Milwaukee, like, those are the best teams in the East. So I don't think it would be disappointing necessarily to end up at the 4, but it would be pretty cool if we could end up passing Philly and net out at the 3.
You know, when you look at the standings too in the East, it makes sense that the Cavs would be around that 4 seed because there is a dynamic at play here, right? Boston has been, this like core of Boston has been good since 2018. This Bucks team has been pretty good since like 2019. The 76ers team, right? They had their first run in 2019. We're talking about teams that have been trying to win a championship or have won a championship in the case of the Bucks for about 4 or 5 years now, right? The Cavs are at the, baby Embiid, the baby Giannis. Remember we were still acting about if Giannis's style can win in the playoffs, or the Celtics trying to figure it out with Kyrie's stage of their build, right? I don't think we think of it like that because we want to be in that conversation right now. But you look at the 76ers, like they're on their third or honestly, like 4th or 5th revision from what that team started out as, is building around Embiid, where they made like all the trades, the Jimmy Butler trade, and then that turns into the James Harden one, and then the Ben Simmons and all that. So that's like they've been on a revision there. The Bucks, they are on their like 3rd revision. People don't really think about it like this, but Eric Bledsoe. Remember that era of the Bucks where they had Eric Bledsoe out there? Now they switched that out with Drew Holiday. They added some pieces around there, and then you can look at the Celtics, and they're clearly on like their 3rd or 4th revision of that core. The Cavs are really just on like their they're 2.0. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like honestly, I don't even know if last year counts. This is pretty much their 1.0 of this core, right? Donovan
Right.
Mitchell, all these young guys around them. So there's still a lot of probably like small revisions that this team's going to do down the line, right? This team right now in 2023 probably going to look a lot different. It sounds crazy to say this year because I can't believe we're there yet, but it's going to look a lot different than this team does in 2027, right? Where maybe Evan Mobley's game has matured more, and maybe, you know, Donovan Mitchell's role changes, and maybe, you know, Jared Allen's role changes, or certain players get swapped in and out. But so that makes so much sense to me that like right there is the current class of the East, right? The Celtics, the Bucks, and the 76ers. Those teams have been around for a while. And I think
it's funny with Boston too. It was like only a year ago that people were talking about them blowing it all up, because like they started off really bad last year and then, you know, finished out the season really strong and then obviously made their run to the finals. People were like, is this team going to work? You know, it's crazy how much, you know, growth can happen when you keep a group together for a longer period of time. Because, yeah, I mean, if you asked most people probably like 2 years ago for that team, there were so many questions on if they were gonna be able to work as a unit. So the Cavs are going to be completely different 1, 2, 3 years from now.
And it takes time, right? Yeah. Like there was all three of these teams we're talking about that have been in these cores for a long time, and why the East is so good, are either at the point to where if they're not successful, like Philly, if they lose in the second round, like, let's say they play the Cavs in the second round somehow, and they lose to the Cavs, they're going to fire everybody, and Embiid's probably going to be on a different team, right? So then all of a sudden the Sixers spot opens up for the Cavs. The Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis was about to hit free agency, and it was a real possibility that he wasn't coming back to that Bucks team. He ends up staying there. They end up being really good the next year, win a championship. He's going to probably be there forever. And in Boston, like you said last year, they almost got blown up before they had their run. And they ended up sticking with that team together because, you know, Boston, I think the Cavs are going to be similar to Boston because the Cavs are going to be the young team that people are like, hey, they just got to get this thing. They just got to get this thing. And we might not get that thing for a while. So people are going to get frustrated and forget that this is a very young team. And that's what happened with Boston. They were so good so early that people forgot that Jason Tatum was a rookie, right? Yeah. Like people forgot that Jaylen Brown was like in his first year, like that. All of these pieces were incredibly young for them. And Boston's the one that's interesting because even when like the Bucks are going to age out pretty soon here, right? Chris Middleton's getting older. He's more injury prone. Giannis, he might play forever. I don't know. I'm not going to bet against him, but they got older pieces there like Drew Holiday, right? That are very important. Like Brooke Lopez, you know, like they're relying a lot on Bobby Portis, who's also getting up there in age as far as NBA role players go. So you look at the Bucks and you look at the 76ers and you can see, hey, this is probably going to age out soon. And even the 76ers, you're relying a lot on the old James Harden. So even them, they're going to have their time to melt out of this. And this is going to be what, Celtics and Cavs. And then the real question, like, who are the other young teams in the NBA right now? Because right now the East is really good, not because it's young, because there are three established teams that have been good for a while in the East. Right. And then the Cavs just happen to emerge. But the Nets, maybe they become a playoff contender, but they're not really going to be like a threat. The Knicks, I mean, come on, let's be for real.
It's the Knicks.
Yeah, it's the Knicks. Like the Heat are interesting, but again, Jimmy Butler's getting older.
Yeah,
and that's
they're pretty old.
Core built around. They don't really have a replacement for that. Bam hasn't been as effective as he was in 2020 since then. So like I don't know what they're gonna do with that. The Hawks are a young team that they look like they capped their ceiling already by making that DeJounte Murray trade. The Raptors, like I don't see them becoming like a great team anytime soon, just because They have Scotty Barnes, but like I don't, and they're probably going to lose Pascal Siakam, right? So they're probably going to be a decent team, but not a great team. Wizards, Bulls, same story. I mean, DeMar DeRozan's old and they're not good. Pacers, Magic, Hornets, maybe Pistons.
It's so hard to predict with the NBA too because of player movement. Like it is so present in the current day where, maybe 10 years ago, it would be like, we know what the trajectory of these teams are going to be because there's not as much player movement. Now, we see what happened at the trade deadline. It was like, I can't even keep up with who was on what roster. The Nets were going to be such a threat that we didn't want to see in the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, Kyrie and Katie are gone. So it's like, it's so hard to predict in the future what's going to happen, especially as players get older and they want to make those decisions for themselves. And maybe they don't like the situation they're in. Even if it's a good team, they're just like, I want something different. So I do feel good that we have this like very young, selfless group. Like I wouldn't, judge anyone if years down the road, someone on our team wants to go somewhere else. Like I get it, that happens, but it does feel good that we're kind of building something rather than these like big stars where you just don't know what's going to happen to them in like 2 years. Those are scarier positions to be in.
Yeah, where it's all relying around a star. And like the interesting thing, and even with the Celtics, right? Jaylen Brown might want out soon. Like that's been lingering for a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if they can replace that. So it's like the East is very tough now, but I can see it as soon as this time next year. We're talking about the East being weak and it being a 2-team race, being the Cavs and the Celtics, or the Cavs, Bucks, and Celtics, because I'm not going to count out Giannis until it's time to count out Giannis. Because, fun fact, they've won 10 out of their last 10 games.
Yeah. Giannis is how I feel about Pat Mahomes, where I'm like, until you tell me otherwise, I am not doubting you ever again. Like, sorry, not happening. You are going to win until proven otherwise.
And then that's where I want to roll into last night's game, because I think that's the interesting thing, because I think people get frustrated with the Cavs that they're not able to consistently beat the Bucks and beat the 76ers, and they have beaten the Celtics twice. I do think that's interesting that the Celtics are the younger of the three teams that we're talking about there, and that's probably why the Cavs are able to compete with them, because talent-wise they're up there, but I think there are some things mentally where they don't have the experience. Right, like that's just the truth of it. The Cavs don't have the experience yet.
Right.
And I know people gave me flack when I called the Cavs a little undersized, because I was like, they're not super heavy. But you tell me, watching Jared Allen try to do anything with Joel Embiid, that you didn't realize, oh yeah, maybe they are a little undersized, because Joel Embiid is just bullying everybody on the floor.
Yeah, Embiid and Giannis are like the two guys in the league where I'm like, we just don't have an answer for them, which, to be fair, like most teams don't have an answer for those two guys. Like it's hard to have an answer for the physical specimens that each of them are. So I don't want to like hate on us too much for that. But at the same time, like when you see Mobley and Allen standing next to Embiid, it's like Embiid has to take like a little push and it's like they can't even handle it. Like Jared Allen was like a rag doll at certain points early on in that game. It was kind of hard to watch.
yeah, Jared, like that's the thing. Jared Allen is good against like 99% of bigs, but like there are some dudes who are just bigger than him, and it hurts him a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's just a long night for him. But like the 76ers, like watching Joel Embiid, it's kind of like watching old videos of Shaq, where you're like, man, was Shaq really that big? And then you see Shaq stand next to one of his contemporaries, like, yo, Shaq was giant. Shaq could do anything. And then you watch Joel Embiid like do a dribble in between his leg, hezzy step back three, and this is like, okay, at that size, he is a giant. Like, I don't think cameras do it justice how giant of a person Joel Embiid is. Like, that is a massive person, because like you see Jared Allen in person, you think that's the biggest person you ever seen. Yeah. And then Joel Embiid is like 2 times the size of Jared Allen. And like a better athlete. And Jared's a good athlete. Like that's right. The 76ers are a sneaky big team though, right? They're a sneaky heavy team, because James Harden is a big dude at 6'8". Yeah. I think like 240. He usually plays a little bit heavier than what he's listed at. Tobias Harris is not a small guy. He's also 6'8", right? Like there's Tyrese Maxey who's small, but like the main core players that they have are bigger guys. And the same
Yeah.
thing goes with the Bucks. The Bucks had that same thing where it's not just Giannis. They throw Brook
Yeah.
Lopez out there, and Brook Lopez is a giant man as well, like just big old dude. And that causes issues. And I think that's just going to be a problem for this Cavs team, right? Is they don't have the size interiorly to be able to hold up against some of the bigger bigs. And it just happens that those are also the elite bigs, because we don't let bigs get big unless they elite nowadays.
Right.
So that's just going to be a problem for them. And even though they have Mobley, even though they have Jared Allen, Mobley is not blocking Joel Embiid's shot on a consistent basis, because he's going to get hurt or foul out if he tries to.
Right.
Same thing with Jared Allen.
And he gets every call too. I'm sure you noticed that last night, where he's the star that gets every call. So you got to be careful when you're near him, just to not mess anything up.
Yeah, and he's good at free throws too, which drives you nuts. Like, he's not just good at, he's really good at free throws. So it's like, oh yeah. Like, there was one play where Jared fouled him on a fast break, and I was like, good foul, Jared. And then I was like, oh no, it's Joel Embiid. He's just gonna make these. like this isn't a regular big man. Like, usually dudes that big can't shoot free throws, but he can shoot free throws. And he's averaging like 33 points a game. Now, the 76ers' big issues have never been the regular season, though. It's always been about the postseason. So we'll see what they do there. But that's going to be I think the Cavs' biggest issues are those teams that are just heavier than them. Because the Cavs have length and they have height in that backcourt, in that front court. They don't necessarily have size, right?
Yeah.
Which has been a bit of an issue, and why you can notice that when days where JB feels like he's struggling with size, he throws Lamar Stevens out there, right? Because Lamar Stevens can give him some extra size. If Rolo wasn't such a bad defender, I would think he would even throw Rolo out there just to have the size out there. But if you put Embiid on the wing with Rolo, why even do that to him? You know?
Yeah, it's also like probably part of the reason we match up better against Boston than those other two teams, because I think size-wise, it just works better. Like, we just have better matchups and ways to defend. So we've played them better. But yeah, when it comes to when we got those big guys out there, it's a lot tougher. I also I think I forget about James Harden sometimes, because there was so much drama surrounding him on like bouncing from different teams and some injury stuff. And then you kind of forget that like when he's hot, he's like one of the best guys out there, and it's really hard to defend. And I feel like he gave us a ton of problems last night, and he's been playing well. But you're right, for that team, it's like the playoffs have been their issue. So it's fine to watch them do this during the regular season. They've gone on these runs many times before where everyone's like, this is the Sixers year. They're really incredible. And then they kind of blow it, which would be funny for Philly sports fans who have lost in the World Series. They lost in the Super Bowl. If they have to lose like deep in the NBA playoffs, like that'd be kind of funny for that city.
That would be
man.
But
brutal.
Yeah, it's just that's the one thing I see. Like, okay, when I'm like, what's going to limit the Cavs early in this build? And I think that's just they gotta wait till some of these older heavy teams just age out, right? Like, if it just becomes them in Boston out the East, I think they'll be fine. But I think a lot of this is, man, we just have to it was like this with a lot of these teams we're talking about, right? Boston, Philly, in Memphis, not Memphis. Milwaukee, it was like this when LeBron was here, where there was like, we just gotta wait out LeBron. We gotta wait till he's not here anymore, and then all of a sudden things change for them. Same thing with the Raptors, even though they're clearly not the same team that won the championship. But like, when you're in that position, I think that's what you're waiting for. Is like, okay, there are just some things here where like we gotta wait for Evan Mobley to get big enough to be able to hold his own against a Joel Embiid defensively in the block, and we also got to like just wait it out until maybe Joel gets traded somewhere, or maybe Joel's just not on a team where it matters how good he is, because they're just not good enough around him. Or
just injuries. Like, any given year, someone could get injured, and that changes the whole trajectory of the playoffs. Like the year Toronto won, like the Warriors had a bunch of injuries late. Like, I'm sure people all projected that year that the Warriors were going to win it all. So it just kind of, there's so much like parity that happens on any given year where Embiid is injury prone. Like, something could happen there, and you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah, but
You
those
just
are
want to
two
be in
teams
it.
I'm
You want
like,
to be close so that you can just be involved.
yeah, and that's why I'm like, okay, if I look at the playoff standings, right, you want to at least be the 4 seed because you want to have home court.
Yep.
Um, I'm fine with the 4 seed
Yeah.
because that probably means Boston in the second round. And I
Which is
feel this
almost
sounds
better.
crazy because
I know.
Boston is such a good team. But again,
Yeah.
the playoffs are about matchups more than they are about
Yes.
how good your record is. And I think the Cavs have a decent enough matchup with Boston to where
Hmm.
they can live. Yes, they're going to give up something on the perimeter because they don't
Hmm.
have a dedicated wing defender. But the stuff that Philly was doing where they were forcing the Cavs forwards to shoot threes last night, Boston can't do because they just don't have the size to do it. They don't have the size to cut that vertical spacing that the Cavs have with the lobs that negate what teams try to do when they do that, right? Boston just doesn't have
Hmm.
the size there. So you can have a better chance to have your offense going. And I think also Evan Mobley doesn't have to worry about like there's Al Horford there who could be a problem because he's old and big, and there's Robert Williams still there, so like they have some size there, but it's
Yeah.
not like Embiid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you can live with, okay, Evans just gonna be on Tatum if he gets hot. Like,
Right.
and we'll deal with whatever rotations we have to make and sacrifices we have to make. Obviously, Jarrett's going to stay on Al Horford in that situation, but you can live with like somebody smaller being on a Robert Williams just because he doesn't have to bag their offensively to really kill you like an Embiid does. So you
Right.
have more solutions against a Boston than you do, let's say, if you get the Bucks in the second round.
Yeah.
Playoff Giannis. You ain't
That's
got
brutal.
nothing for
Yeah.
playoff Giannis. Like, I understand that we have beaten the Bucks and beaten Giannis. Playoff Giannis, it's like beating
Yeah.
LeBron in the regular season.
Yeah.
It's a different dude.
Yeah.
And
It's tough.
yeah,
You know
it's
what's funny with you brought up Evan and like last night watching against the Sixers, I feel like it looked like he wasn't playing one of his better games. Like I think he was struggling in a lot of ways. He still had 23 and 9 last night. And I was like, what? He almost had like a 20-point double-double. And like I felt like he played awful. He's having these like sneaky games where he's
he
getting
did it
more
in like one
stats.
half.
Even if he doesn't look good, I'm like, what is going on here? Whereas earlier that would have been like 10 and 8 or something, wouldn't have been as impressive, but like 23 and 9 is a great stat line. I was like, okay, Evan.
Yeah, and it's like he did it all in one half.
Yeah,
Where I think he had 21 of his 23 in the second half.
probably. That was
Yeah,
most people. I think Donovan had like 23 of his 33 or something. It
when
was,
you
yeah.
have 35 points in the first half,
Yeah.
it tends to tends to shake out like that.
That was so bad.
Yeah, but it is an interesting one because they lose that game and it was kind of disappointing because they came back all the way and then they almost won it, but then they didn't. And it
Yeah.
makes you forget that they also like spent the last 7 games beating everybody by 20 points, and even in the game like against Chicago where they really had no business winning it because they were
Yes.
schedule gas. And
That was
they ended
brutal.
up
They got
winning
back
that.
at like 4 a.m. that day, I think JB said, from New Orleans. They got back at 4 a.m. and then had to play that night against the Bulls. I'm like, that is awful.
And they still beat the Bulls.
They still beat them.
Now people panic about the Cavs after losses. If you're a Bulls fan,
Yeah, that's big panic.
you should be panicking.
They should have. That was the easiest like scheduled win possible when you looked at what the Cavs had to do, and they still beat them by I think like 9 or 10. Like,
Dog,
okay.
they were down 15 and won by like 11.
It's crazy.
Insane. Insane. So like when this team's clicking and they have the matchups they want, they're really good. It's just, when we're critiquing the Cavs, I think we need to do it in the context of, okay, they're going to have to either play the 76ers, the Bucks, or the Celtics if they get to the second round because they're the 4th seed. And I think either the Bucks or the Celtics are going to have the 1 seed. And either the Cavs or the 76ers are going to have the 3 seed. So we don't know how that's going to shake out because all these things are really tight. But what's clear is that that's going to be the 1-2 matchup. And this is going to be the 3-4 seeding. So that's going to happen here. And when you look at the Cavs and you look at them versus those 3 teams, you can see the issues being a little bit of size. And maybe if you could have a wing out there, that would be helpful. They added Danny Green. which was a
Mhm.
surprise to me. I did not have that on my radar. What do you think he adds to this Cavs team?
Yeah, I mean, first, like we just needed a shooter in general, which if you can get someone cheap in that situation, I guess it made sense, especially since we didn't do anything at the trade deadline. And look, like he's pretty old. I don't know what his actual age is, but he's definitely getting up there. But it's just I think good to have options at this point, especially as we get closer to playoffs. Like you just need options of guys you can throw out there if someone's having a really off night or whatever, to have someone who has had previous success and has had a hot hand in the past. I think that was kind of what they're looking for. I don't think this does too much for the team in general, right? Like it's not taking us to any other level, but I think it's more just having those shooting options that they were looking for.
3 years ago, he would have been the 3-and-D wing that we needed,
Yeah,
right? There are questions about his athletic ability there. I
yeah.
think what Danny Green is good for is in the playoffs, it gets weird. Your rotations change every series. He might be a piece that, let's say you're going up against Boston, right? And you want a little bit more length and shooting
Hmm.
at the three. You can run the lineups out there where Danny Green gets about like 10, 15 minutes in the playoff game or in the playoff series,
Hmm.
just to add you a little bit of a different element there. He might have a couple games left in him. He might not. He's 35. He's right around the age where guys start to like kind of age out in the NBA. But I think just it's a flyer on a 3-and-D wing,
Yeah,
a proven 3-and-D wing. It would be great if we could get Danny Green from like 2018 or something like that.
sure.
But yeah, unfortunately, it's Danny Green from now. But we'll see what he can offer. And then honestly, that buyout signing, I was like, who's going if Danny Green is coming in? Like that was an interesting question. I don't think anybody wanted to ask because we knew the answer. And it sounds
Yes.
like Kevin Love is going. Um, Interesting career in Cleveland. What's sad about it when you look at it, he spent what 2014 to now. It's almost 10 years with the club. He
Crazy.
spent 9 of those years being the most hated player on
He was the
the
scapegoat
team.
for everything. Anything
And
that went
he
wrong, it was
will
like Kevin.
Yeah, well, he spent 9 years being the most hated player on the team, and then he got like the 1 year where everybody loves him, and he will now be like the poster child of the 2016 championship team because you can't always
Yeah,
get LeBron to show up to your stuff. So who's gonna show up? Kevin
Kevin.
Love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's who's
There was
gonna be
never
here.
more trade rumors surrounding anyone than there was Kevin Love. It was like, are we going to trade him this year? Are we going to trade him this year? Like every year there was some talk of like Kevin Love going, which is, it's so funny because who would have thought like back in even the championship year, those really good years, that Kevin Love would be the longest lasting of those three of LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love. Like I would have never guessed it.
People didn't even want to trade for him. That was the
No.
thing, right? There was a debate on whether you should have even traded for Kevin Love. I remember, funnily enough, it was down to the Cavs and the Warriors, and the Cavs got him because the Warriors were not trying to include this guard known as Klay Thompson, I believe. They didn't want to break up that backcourt with him and Steph. I guess that turned out to be a good move.
Yeah.
But the people were like, I don't know. Should the Warriors like? I remember being like, you gonna hold for Klay Thompson? That's odd. Okay, we'll take him. But you bring in Kevin Love, and then like people were like, all right, somebody needs to go to beat Kevin Durant, and we were all drawing up trades about how we're gonna add stuff around LeBron and Kyrie. Like it was not about what's gonna make Kevin Love better, and he is like he again. We have spent the most amount of time talking about how he's going to get out of town,
Yeah.
and he ends up being the one that stays forever. Do
Yeah.
you think he catches on with a different team here at the end?
So in Sham's report, I think he said that there was like some contenders that there were talks with. So that's going to be really weird to like if he is on a team we play in the playoffs. That's just going to be such a strange experience.
It'd
I
be
was
like,
thinking about this with Kevin though, like in his time in Cleveland, like I feel like he never got to be the like actual player that he came in here as. Like the
mm-hmm.
level of ownership he got to have in his previous team compared to he came here and he kind of had to be like a spot up three shooter. Like it was not the typical role he was used to. It was always a diminished role. And then, he had, after the years that Kyrie and LeBron were gone, he had some like rougher years and then had to take on this like veteran diminished role. Like he never got to be like actual best Kevin Love, which is kind of a bummer, but like major props to him that he like stood all 8, 9, 10 years or whatever it was doing that, because that's gotta like get to you. Like everyone's blaming everything on you. You never get to like see your full potential and you just stick it out the whole time. Props to him for that.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Kevin Love's career is you can look at it one or two ways, because there is the way of looking at it like, hey, he never really got to do what he was doing in Minnesota when he was putting up those crazy numbers,
right.
And had those usage rates. But like right at that time, 2014, 2015, when he got traded to the Cavs and his role and his career changed, it was right as everything changed for, post players, for power forwards, right? That's what Kevin Love was. He was a back to the basket post player who takes a lot of shots and dribbles the ball a lot, and you can run the offense through him. That got phased out right when he got traded to the Cavs, and the Cavs never really were going to use him like that anyways. So it's like, in a way, there's a world where he stays in Minnesota or gets traded to be Kevin Love from Minnesota somewhere, and he might have phased out the league earlier because playing with the Cavs forced him to change his game into a spot up, four who shoots the ball a lot. And that wasn't who he was in Minnesota. And I think that ended up being something that helped him evolve his game. I wish he found the right situation for him, and the Cavs found the right situation for him earlier, because it's sad that we only got 1 year of almost six man of the year Kevin Love in Cleveland.
I know.
But, I am glad that he did find that eventually, though. So that's Kevin Love's career in Cleveland. Look, he will be
a weird ending. Like, if this is it, that's such a strange way to go out, just like,
he might get the one. He might like finish. It might be like Andy Varejao, right? Where like he like finished out with Golden State, but then like we be like, oh, let's sign him for like a 10-day, and then like have him retire with the Cavs, and then like check him in and check him out of a game
something
and
like
let
that.
him.
Yeah,
something like that.
Because this feels wrong for like how long he was here. It feels like this is like kind of icky. I get they got to do what they got to do. Kevin hasn't been providing much for this
when they trade for
year.
LeBron next year. And then
there we go.
Just bring back Kevin Love for half a season, like they did the Dwayne Wade LeBron reunion.
Yes,
in 2019.
I was so excited when that happened. When we got Dwayne Wade, I thought it was going to be like the greatest thing in the world. Not forgetting that Dwayne Wade was like a shell of himself at that point. But
Dwayne Wade was like, I'm going to hit all the hits. Like that's what I appreciate about Dwayne Wade. He was like, all right, I'm going to reconnect with Brian, let y'all get that little cameo, and then I'm going to round it out with one last year with the Miami Heat, and it just felt right.
I remember LeBron and Dwayne Wade sat down that year and did this like sit down with Rachel Nichols, and they were like peanut butter and jelly, and I watched it like 100 times. I was like, oh yeah, this is everything. And then it was like, okay, that was it for Dwayne Wade. Just thanks for being here for a second.
I remember making fun of Dwayne Wade being a shell of himself when LeBron left for the Cavs.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't going to be nothing when he came to
he had
the
a great
Cavs
career.
But it was just like a fun, like, oh, okay, wow. Dwayne Wade actually, like, nobody saw that one coming, him coming to Cleveland to play with LeBron. But,
right.
It's just, all Cavs take an interesting turn in history all the time. But that's the Cavs. Well, actually, let's talk about what they have coming up before or after the All-Star break. What do you see, Ab?
Yeah. So it's getting tough after the All-Star break. First of all, I think this is like a great time for us to just reset in general. Like we had that tough game against the 76ers, but reset and come back. It's going to be tough, though. We have a home game against the Nuggets, away against the Hawks, home against the Raptors, who like not a great team, but they always give us problems. Like we struggle so much against them, and then away at Boston. So that's like an interesting 4-game stretch there coming back that I think we're going to want to get in a little bit of a rhythm, especially as we're pushing through, because there's not that much season left. And you want to, even when you're playing those teams like the Nuggets and Boston, who are really up there in the standings, like I want to win those. Like we need to be winning some of those.
And what is interesting about that stretch in the schedule is I think like there's a bunch of those games that are like against the same team back to back.
Yeah, we have
So
like three of them, I feel like, that are like back to back, two sets of two. It's like almost like they do in baseball a lot more. They don't really do that, I feel like, in the NBA very much.
yeah, it's like mini playoff series, which might
Yeah.
help the Cavs with team with little to no experience in that department.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, they always do this with the Boston games. It's the second time we play them 4 times a year, right? And in both times, it's been 2 games in like 6 days,
Yeah.
one on ESPN, one not. Like
Right.
legitimately, that's the same way that they're playing Boston again, and then they play Miami Heat back to back. Both games I believe are in Miami, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I think both games are in Miami, yeah, on the road. And then also, so they have like this weird 4-game road trip where they're just playing Miami and Charlotte,
Yeah.
but like
Interesting.
back to back nights. Oh, we're not
Yeah.
back to back nights, but like that's gonna be a tricky one, right? Because you get Miami
Yeah.
on a Wednesday, and then you play them again on a Friday, and
Are
Miami
either
one of
of
them
our
cities.
Boston ones are either of our Boston ones on ESPN? I
Yeah, the
wonder.
first one's on
First one
ESPN,
is
March
okay.
1st. And
After
I'm
last night, I was like, after the way the first half went, I'm like, never put us on ESPN again. This is so embarrassing. At least we like finished it out better. But sometimes I'm like, I want to play well if we're actually getting our nationally televised games
watch
that don't
out.
come
We
very
play the
often.
76ers again on national TV
Oh
on
man.
March 15th.
Can we
And
give
that
us
might
one easy one?
well that's going to be an interesting one too because that's after that stretch of games, right? I talk
Mhm.
about on March 10th. And then you play the 76ers. So let's say y'all both go even down this stretch or
Yeah.
maybe you get them by one. That game probably going to determine who gets the 3 seed, right? Because
And
then
a
it's
tiebreaker.
Wizards, Nets, Rockets. And
Yeah.
then what
I think our
Hawks.
and like versus Philly right now, we're 1-1 with them, I think, right? Have we only played them twice so far?
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a tiebreaker too if we end up having the same record somehow. That would be a big one, just accounting for that at the
And then
end.
after that game, the schedule
Yeah.
lightens up considerably. It's Washington, Brooklyn, Houston, Atlanta, New York, Indiana, Orlando, Charlotte. I think
I love that.
maybe one of those teams might be in the playoffs, and you get Brooklyn on another one of those weird road double 2 and 3 situations where it's like you're just in Brooklyn for 3
I'll take
days.
that.
So
It's a nice way to
that's
finish things out.
that's the rest of the Cavs season. We
Crazy.
see
It's
if they
going
get
by
to
so
50 wins.
fast. I
It
can't
is.
believe it. It's like it's almost the end already.
Well, we forget how long the basketball season is because we
Yeah,
started during football season.
I know.
But it's getting to that. And here's also the thing about basketball season: the playoffs are really long. The playoffs
Very.
are really long. So like it's like what 2-3 weeks if you just get to the second round.
Yeah.
And then it's all the way till June if you get to the Eastern Conference
Right.
Finals.
Well, we have the play in now, which takes some time. Like I
Yeah,
feel like that chips into it
the
too.
playoffs take forever.
Forever.
I think what the Eastern Conference Finals, I mean, not the Eastern Conference semis would start the first week of May. So
Yeah.
got a
Yeah,
lot of
we won our
basketball left.
championship like late June, I think. It was like
Mm-hmm.
what was it, like the 19th or 20th? Like it was pretty late. That is really long, but
Like
hopefully
postseason
we're
is an
making it fun.
actual season in the NBA. It's a whole different
Yeah.
season. But that's
Yeah.
going to be it for this week's episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Make sure you check out Ab on Sports Illustrated Browns Digest. She also has a podcast, Just a Girl from Cleveland, available everywhere where podcasts are available. Spotify, Apple Music, Title. Do they have podcasts on Title? I guess Title.
I don't know.
And everywhere podcasts available. So if it's available, if you have podcasts available, she's on it. So make sure you check her out there. Also follow her on Twitter, Abby_Mueller, Abby_. And everybody else, I want y'all to have a great day. Have an even better night.